Hey everyone, welcome to the Prophecy Roundtable. Hey, all we can promise you is an insightful and entertaining chat about the end times. We certainly do not have all the answers, but we like to talk about it. It's a lot of fun. God has put so much in the Bible, so much in prophecy, eschatology, that, well, it merits a conversation. All right. And turns out when we actually listen to other people, turns out we learn some things, right? So, in that same spirit, we have a special guest. We have Daniel Wright. He does a lot of, well, I think almost all. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Daniel, but I think almost all of the Prophecy Watchers magazines. He's the guy. All right, so he does a lot of the graphics and the writing, and he's a scholar in his own right because he is really great at the geography and topography and all those things of the Holy Land. And if people are interested, he's going to be taking a trip. I think it's next year, called the Scholars Tour. So that'll be fun. But I am so delighted to have you with us, Daniel. It's really great to have you here. I don't know. Maybe Daniel can't hear me. That was the
Well,
cue.
I will. Thank you
Oh,
so
there he
much,
is.
Doug.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, no problem. Hey,
Yeah, I
we're
can hear
really glad to
you.
have you.
I will tell you that
Okay.
I'm contacting you from a rural location.
Okay. Well, um, hopefully your internet
Yeah,
will
we're
keep
we're
working.
we're
Yeah.
talking across each other. So let me just speak for a
Go.
moment and tell you that I am calling from a remote location, and you're sputtering pretty bad. I heard about every half syllable of your introduction. So do you hear me clearly?
Yes, we hear you. We hear you.
Do you hear me
Yes.
clearly?
Yes, I hear you clearly.
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 Okay.
Yeah, you're coming
All right.
across good, dude.
Well, okay. Okay.
So tell us
Well,
about yourself, and
Doug was
then we'll
sputtering,
jump into your
I'm
book.
not used. Okay. Well, I am I'm employed by Prophecy Watchers in Oklahoma City. I do their magazine, so I'm basically a graphics, art direction professional. I do book covers. I do DVD covers. I like I said, I do the monthly magazine for Bob Ulrich and Gary Stearman and Mondo Gonzalez, and I love doing that. It's every month I'm on it, and it's always a challenge. 48-page magazine. I do it every bit of it. So sometimes it's easier than others, but I'm also have always been interested in the scriptures. I've been a student of the Bible, just an ordinary lay student of the Bible. I'm not a PhD, and I haven't gone to seminary. I'm just an ordinary student of the scriptures for 4 decades. And anyway, along the way, well, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. So I'm married almost 40 years. August will be 40 years I've been married, and I have a lovely son and a daughter-in-law and 2.5 grandchildren. I have one in the oven, so almost 3 grandchildren, which is real exciting. And they live reasonably close, kind of near Asheville. That's Doug's old stomping grounds, from what I learned recently. But anyway, so I live and work remotely in Western South Carolina, and I wrote a book. And this book is really more of my own theological treatment of all things Bible. So trying to kind of make sense of everything in the scripture. And it's kind of dumped into this book. The subtitle is In Front of Your Eyes, Understanding Sacred Topography in the Holy Land, the Pattern of Yehovah, and the Way of the Messiah. So there's a lot there. And basically, it's an end-to-end comprehensive sort of view of how all of these things are related. Now, when I started working on this project, I thought about something I've looked at over time, and that is the idea that people are human beings are always looking for meaning. It's not unique to us in the 21st century with the internet and those in your audience and those in my circle of friends, we're obviously Christians. So we obviously have a biblical worldview, and we derive our understanding, our sense of meaning from the scriptures. And but human beings are wired by our Creator, I think, to look for patterns. And this is kind of warped, but I do have a sense of humor, so I hope you'll work with me on this one. Like the person who makes a cheese sandwich, a grilled cheese sandwich in New Jersey. The person happens to be Roman Catholic and flips over the grilled cheese, and there's an image of Mary, the Mother of God, on the grilled cheese, and it becomes, a sensation, and people are coming to her house, and they've got wheelchairs and crutches, and and they're enamored. Or the people who see Mary, for example, in panes of glass at a church. And on it goes. You know as well as I do, if you're sitting somewhere like looking at a forest, you're looking at a wall of trees, and you kind of see a face in those trees, just the way the shapes of the trees are. You see the pattern of a face. Same in a cloud. You can see some clouds rolling, and you see a horse, or you see someone that you see a face that looks like a human being. So this sort of thing, this sort of, I don't know, built-in attribute is part of being human, finding patterns. Well, the word pattern is in my subtitle. So I don't believe that. I think that some of the patterns that people see are not really there. They make them there by their imagination. And there's also mental disorders around people who see patterns that aren't there, or there's clearly a pattern there and they're looking right at it and they don't see it. That's a different kind of, I'm talking about brain injury or mental illness. But set all of that aside for a minute. There is a sort of an inclination in human beings to look for patterns, and I think that God is aware of that. And it's interesting that the Lord told Moses in Exodus, after the children of Israel had come out of Egypt, he told Moses, I want you to make this worship structure, this tabernacle, this mishkan, and all of the accoutrements and all of the elements that go with it. And you need to do it precisely according to the pattern I showed you in the mountain. So biblical patterns, and the biblical pattern that I'm talking about in this book is not something that I think that I'm imagining. It's something I began to see and sort of piece together. If you look at all of the books that have been written, theological commentaries by rabbinical sources, by Christian commentators, theologians, systematic, there's a lot that's being said over and over and over again that's familiar. And there is a pattern, there is a topology, there is some people like the word shadow, the types and shadows in the Bible. But what I'm trying to address in this book is the reality, the eternal reality of a pattern that was first revealed to Abraham, I think, but certainly in a rich way was revealed to Moses at Horeb or Sinai, and I believe is similar to what was revealed to Ezekiel in chapters 40 to 48. It's recorded there. So these visions of this architecture, this enormous pattern that is scalable, I think it's been applied all through biblical history, beginning with Genesis, with the time of Abraham, and all the way through the book, all the way to Revelation 21 and 22. So I think it's what I argue in my book, and it's really, I also want to say, the book is just my opinion. Okay, it's my opinion. I'm not coming at this topic as one who has finally arrived to tell all the rest of you what you should have seen all along. This is my opinion. This is what the Lord has shown me. And he's shown me this sort of, I think, as an answer to a question that I've asked repeatedly to God in prayer, I've either vocalized it, or I've also thought it, and always had this hunger to understand why why I was saved, why my friends were saved. What is God doing in the world? What is he redeeming us? What is he purchasing us for? And part of that answer is, I think, revealed in Revelation 21 and 22. There is a heavenly city out there that Jesus has assisted in producing, in completing, preparing for us. Although I would argue that city has also been in existence before recorded human history, but that's another argument altogether. But I just think that this pattern in its simplicity in the wilderness grows and is extrapolated through history, through biblical history, to eventually become the temples at Jerusalem and elevating the whole holiness of the landscape, and is prophesied and revealed in the prophecies of Ezekiel 40 to 48 in a glorified, exalted, even in more greatly enlarged implementation that eventually is replaced or fulfilled, if you will, in the New Jerusalem. So these themes are covered, and I start at the beginning of the book. Can I progress through some images here?
Absolutely. Yeah, please do. I'll put it up on the screen. Go for it.
I've got them here. So the redemption corridor, I created a map. So people ask me, what is a redemption corridor? Well, the redemption corridor is a book, and it's also a map. It's a book and a map. I made the map because I love maps. That's why I made this map. I also made it because I wanted it to be a companion with the book. Now, just as an aside, since my book is produced by KDP on Amazon, they can't put the map in the book. Their technology won't allow that. So I made it separately, and it's available if you zap that little graphic right there or go to that tiny URL. It'll point you to a location where you can get both of them together. Just saying. So the map has two sides, and the larger side is clearly on the east is Jordan. The Jordan River is in the center, and the Jerusalem Basin is on the left, on the west. And then the flip side of it is a sort of a focus on the Herodian Temple Mount area in the time of Jesus, focusing on the Jerusalem Basin. So that's essentially what the book is. My table of contents, I address. There's I'm going to show you quickly. There's like, you can see these are numbered 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 4, 1, 5. These are points that are addressed directly in the book. The book and the map go together. I do have grayscale images of these portions. The map is basically broken into 4 parts, 4 zones, if you will, just for organizational purposes. And so there's grayscale images of these that occur in the book. But if you get the color map, it's just more fun. Let's just be honest. So the zone 1 is over on the east in Jordan, and you can see those elements. So there's Peor, there's Zophim, there's Bamat Baal, and there's some events there at Mount Nebo. Moving slightly to the west in the Jordan Valley, I've got a thing called the Jordan River Intersect. There's 3 events there that I address that you will recognize, because I'm going to get to them. And then there's, moving further to the west, there's Qumran, and there's the Judah Wilderness Ascent. This is more sparse because it's more of like a connective area. It's an area where people were in transit, although there is some reference to the Day of Atonement and to Jesus' temptation in this portion. And then on the farthest west is the Jerusalem Basin, and there are elements in there. You see them numbered. And if I went through and listed what 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, if I listed what all 7, you recognize them. So the point is that these events all occurred in this rectangular orientation, and I don't think that's by chance. The table of contents, that's just a quick breeze through. This just shows you the map keys. So you can see in the right column 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. So those correspond with the icons that are on the map. And the chapter sections, I have biblical text, and I have my interpretation of how they apply. And this is the wilderness ascent, and then the land of Moriah and the Jerusalem Basin area. So that's sort of a quick rundown. Maybe I've got some specific things I could drill into, but maybe I should pause and let you ask a question, or if you have a comment or something, Doug.
Yeah. Fascinating.
I'm all ears.
It's really interesting. So what you're saying is the things that transpired from Egypt to Jerusalem, that all happened in a particular corridor, and that God has something going on in that particular space. Is that right?
Yeah, I will tell you again, and I hate to say this to you, but you're every time you speak, I get about every other syllable. So that could be me. I apologize. I do live, as they say in the South, I live in the sticks. I think you were asking, like, from Exodus to did you say that?
Yes.
Yeah, he said from Egypt to, and I don't remember what your other endpoint was.
Yeah, I was to Jerusalem, basically. That
okay. Well, this is really. Let me just say, this does not involve Egypt. This involves those places that you see here, the places that you see here. Obviously, I bear this out in the book. Obviously, there are biblical events occurred in our 66 books of the Protestant Bible, far outside of this rectangle. I get that. I'm not trying to say that this is the only thing that matters. I'm just saying these events are related. So what happened at Mount Nebo, I have it early in the book because it's the first three sections, the first 1:1, 1:2, and 1:3. These are all the events where Balaam is trying to curse Israel for his employer. But what's interesting, and I think Balaam, I think he gets a bad rap. He's a pagan, he's this and that. Yeah, he is, but he also would refuse to speak anything about Israel other than what he heard from Hashem. And the sacred name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Jehovah, is in the text. He continues to push back on his employer Balak and says, look, I can only say what I hear him telling me to say. So, and for all his effort, he was unable to curse them, and instead he blessed them. So those events happened. Oops, wrong one. Sorry, still the wrong one. That's the one I want. Over there on the right. And so on my map, I have highlighted like 1:1 at the bottom center here. 1:1 has CBA. 1:2 just above it has also ABC, and above it to the right, 1.3 has ABC. These are literal, and they're borne out in the text of the book. Latitude, longitude. These are proposed locations that I think could actually because these are unidentified. These are undescribed in archaeology or even in church or biblical tradition, Jewish tradition. The locations of the field of Zophim, Bamat Baal, top of Peor, those places are not known. But I think that they are likely one of the three sites in each of those zones. And these are not very large areas. If you look at the center one, Field of Zophim, which is the largest square, you see the ABC. From the C to the A, really is like 3/4 of a mile. These are not very far apart. But I think that what they need to do is they need to do a survey. I mean, someone from a university, someone from a university in Jordan needs to do an archaeological survey of these areas. They're still bald. They're still uncovered by trees. They've been open to the sky for the last 5,000 years easily. There's never been towns built on any of these. So there's nothing there. So it'd be just a little sweeping of the brush, I think, and you might be finding I'm not saying you would necessarily find the cult items that are described in the Bible with regard to Balaam's work with Balak, but this is where I think they happened, and I think that they are positionally where they are for a reason. Now, as far as 1.4, 1.5, and 1.6 at Nebo, let's go to the table of contents. I've got Moses at Nebo. So on page 20 of the book, I'm discussing what Moses was doing there, what Moses did there, what he saw from there. I also argue that the 2 Maccabees chapter 2 description of the Ark of the Covenant being hidden on Mount Nebo is related to this larger pattern. I think that Moses being buried there and the Ark being hidden there are related. I think that the 2 Maccabees, this is my opinion, okay? I think the 2 Maccabees chapter 2 description of what happened to the Ark, since the Bible itself, the regular canon of Scripture, is completely silent on the topic. There's no mention of it at all. I believe that Jeremiah hid the Ark on Mount Nebo, and so I bear that out and explain it, why I think that's a possibility in the 1.5 location. And then after about 8 days is my controversial, I'm not alone in this idea, but the idea that Jesus and, are you sitting down, Doug? I mean, I hope you're sitting down. That Jesus and the Transfiguration event occurred on Mount Nebo, not on Mount Tabor, certainly. And I argue that as well. And so those events happened at Mount Nebo. If you don't mind, I'll tell you briefly one of the main reasons I think that, and I'm not going to do it justice. Reading it in the book is so much. I mean, I worked on the book for a long time, so the language is really well crafted. But the main reason that I think that the Transfiguration occurred at Mount Nebo is because of the last location in life that we see Moses and the last location in life that we see Elijah are both east of the river in the zip code of Mount Nebo. So, but you have to actually read the book to see all the rest of the candy that's in there that tries to bear that out.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. Can you hear me now, Daniel? I don't know if you can hear me. Seems like we're not being able to communicate. Okay, well, keep going.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Those are almost complete sentences. There's a little bit of a meow, wah at the end, but that's all right. We're all friends.
What can I do? What can I do?
So, should I continue in this vein? I mean, is this useful?
Continue.
Or
please continue. Yes.
You want me to continue like this, or?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
Okay. So the Jordan River intersect. There's Joshua and the Ark of the Covenant crossed from the east side across to the west side here. The water stopped. Elijah's departure with Elisha when he came down, and he didn't do this of his own volition. He was brought here. Okay, he was sent here. The Spirit of God called and directed Elijah to cross the river here, which he also crossed on dry ground. And he went to the eastern side of the river, and Elisha, his disciple, saw his departure, and a transfer of authority happened there. The same thing happened with Joshua and Moses. Moses and the transfer of authority also happened east of the river, in the area where Elijah went into the sky. So these both happened in the same location, and I don't think that's random. And then Make Straight in the Arava 2.3 is a breakdown of Jesus' baptism. And I believe that Jesus came to the Jordan River on the eastern side of the river, that he entered the river in baptism. And when he exited the river from baptism, he entered over to the western side. So, and part of that, and I bear this out in the text, part of that is the fulfillment of righteousness. Jesus said, let it be so for now, to fulfill all righteousness. And I think that his passage from the, if you will, the pagan Moabitic side to the promised land of Canaan, the land of Israel side, is part of it's I don't want to say it's a picture. It's all the people who've been baptized in history, around the world, all the Christians who've been baptized since the gospel was first preached are aligned with this event that their master performed, the second Joshua, as it were. So the location where Jesus was baptized is the same place the ark was stopped in the river and stopped the water as the Israelites crossed. And it's the same place where Elijah, and Elisha crossed back and forth, which is why I call it the Jordan River intersect. Then moving up into the wilderness, this is kind of like connective tissue. I struggled here. There's really probably like 3 strong sections. This 4th section, admittedly, is a little weak, but there's some interesting things going on here. I just have a small amount about Qumran. I didn't write a lot about Qumran because, I think most of you have probably heard of Qumran. Maybe you've heard of a thing called the Dead Sea Scrolls. You might know something about how they were discovered. There's no point in me, and I bear this out as well, there's no point in me writing a bunch of things that people already know. I'm trying to write things that are sort of in between, that are beside the mountains of things that we all already know. And so
let me just back up if I can,
please.
Daniel, for just a second.
Yeah.
So the ark. So you tie together the ark crossing at the time of the conquest, at the beginning of the conquest, after the transfer of authority from Moses to Joshua at Nebo, the death of Moses, and then they cross into Canaan. And you're saying that you think this is the same place where Elijah crossed before he was taken to heaven. Do I understand that correctly?
Like Doug before you,
You're getting every other word. Okay.
Yeah. My apologies.
Bummer.
Are you hearing me clearly, gentlemen?
We hear you great.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey,
okay.
Daniel, could you explain?
I won't bring it up again, but if you're asking questions and I don't hear them, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Sure, no problem.
Doug.
Yeah, so can you explain why you think
Repeat.
the ark is on Mount Nebo? Why is the ark on Mount Nebo? Why do you think the ark is on Mount Nebo?
2 Maccabees chapter 2. 2 Maccabees chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. 2 Maccabees chapter 2, 1 through 8. Bear it out. Have you not read that?
Well, explain it to us. That's part of the show.
Oh, I see. You want me to actually bear with me? I'll go locate it right here real quick.
Okay.
You're so demanding. You actually want me to do something here. All right.
Well, you could just tell us if you want to. That's fine.
No, I'd actually rather read it. It's really quite good.
Great.
So 2 Maccabees chapter 2, verses 1 through 8 from the KJV read as follows. It is also found in the records. I'm going to insert a couple of comments. What records? We don't know. It is also found, this testimony from 2 Maccabees is mentioning some things that are obviously existing in a second document that this writer is aware of. I don't know what that document is. To my understanding, it's not extant. We don't have one. But I'll continue. It is also found in the records that Jeremiah, that is, the prophet, commanded them, the Israelites, that were carried away to take of the fire as it hath been signified, and how that the prophet, having given them the law, charged them not to forget the commandments of the Lord, and that they should not err in their minds when they see images of silver and gold with their ornaments. And with other such speeches exhorted he them, that the law should not depart from their hearts. So he's addressing the exiles who are on their way to Babylon. Jeremiah is. It was also contained in the same writing that the prophet, being warned of God, commanded the tabernacle and the ark to go with him as he went forth into the mountain, that is Nebo, where Moses climbed up and saw the heritage of God. And when Jeremiah came thither, he found an hollow cave, wherein he laid the tabernacle and the ark and the altar of incense, and so stopped the door. And some of those that followed him came to mark the way, but they could not find it. Which when Jeremiah perceived, he blamed them, saying, As for that place, it shall be unknown until the time that God gather his people again together and receive them unto his mercy. Then shall the Lord show them these things, and the glory of the Lord shall appear, and the cloud also, as it was showed under Moses, and as when Solomon desired that the place might be honorably sanctified. 2 Maccabees 2, verses 1 through 8. So
that's really fascinating. So I'm wondering, do you think that will be found before the beginning of the end times or around the end times?
Well, I'm not prepared to say yay or nay. I think that that bit of text, that bit of text is clear that it will be found later on. That'll be found at some time at the Lord's direction. As to when it would be found, or if I think it will be found, or whatever, that's some speculation that I don't go into. I'm more interested in the location, and I'm just saying this is an ancient text. It's at least 3rd century BCE. It might be as early as 6th century BCE, but it's more likely around the 3rd century. There's some people who think that 2nd Maccabees was actually written after the temple's destruction. So, I'm just saying that also in the book, I delineate some of the other theories about what happened to the ark, all of which, if you know anything about the ark.
So I wasn't aware that some people think that Maccabees was, or 2nd Maccabees was written 3rd or 4th century BCE. I wasn't aware of that. That's the prevailing theory?
When do you think it was written?
Well, I don't know. I'm not an expert at all.
I don't know if it's prevailing. I'm just saying that there's disagreement, just like there is with the Gospels. There's people who tell you that.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, neither am I. I didn't write it to argue its age. I'm just saying that it's an ancient text that gives a biblical account, including people who likely were the last ones near the object. I mean, for example, there's the idea that the ark was taken to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar's army and probably melted down. If Nebuchadnezzar had found the Ark of the Covenant, there would be a biblical record of it. There'd be a Babylonian record of it. There'd have been some severe bragging rights about the fact that the principal cult object of Israel was taken captive. He would have certainly blown a trumpet about that. But there's no mention of it in the list of things that were taken. The ark hidden in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. There are a number of competing stories about how the ark is actually buried under the temple in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Okay, it doesn't ring true to me. I think that it's the fact that, I mean, just think about it. Think about people crawling all around the Temple Mount. Gosh, like during the Crusades, when the place was run by Christians and there was no prohibition, people could go into all those tunnels with. I mean, there's just no way. It's too heavily populated. Mount Nebo has always been a quiet, barren location, but there are Jews in Israel. There are rabbinical authorities. There are rabbis who will tell you they know precisely where it is. There are some who there's a fellow who what's his name? I don't want to name his name because I can't pronounce it properly. But there are some people who think it's just on the other side of the Kotel, the Western Wall, and they know exactly where it is. Of course, the notorious Ron Wyatt, he found it, of course, at Gordon's Calvary near the Garden Tomb He actually went there and shot video of it and took a blood test from it and determined.
Wyatt found everything.
Yeah, yeah, and
right.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that he did. So
Yeah,
I
solved all that
tried
problem. Why everybody else has been wasting their time?
Yeah, I mean, just anyway.
Very,
So I try to deal even
not a very
handedly. I
credible
don't
person.
call people names in my book. I'm not rude.
I'm
There's
a
also
lawyer.
the idea, like from the Ark, the Raiders. Pardon me.
I was saying I'm a lawyer. I don't find him credible at all. So, Mr. Wyatt.
Thank you. Nor do I.
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark movie
comment.
plot has the Ark of the Covenant in Tanis, in Egypt. That's tied to the invasion of Shishak in 926 BCE. It's delineated in 1 Kings 14. That was the idea behind the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And of course, we know Indy found the Ark, and we know that it's been turned over to the U.S. government. It's in a crate somewhere in probably Virginia, and because it's in the government's hands, it'll never ever be seen again. But then I go to then there's the story of how it's in Aksum in Ethiopia in St. Mary's Church, and whereas I do believe there is an object there, I think the story that describes how it got there is for me unsatisfying and untenable. And there's a lot. I mean, I've got like 4 pages just describing the details of that. So I like the Second Maccabees story because it fits into this framework. I think it's interesting that the thing that was revealed to the heart of what was revealed to Moses is discreetly stashed in the same place where his body was discreetly stashed. There is no grave for Moses. No one knows where Moses was buried. No one knows where the ark is. So I think it's appropriate that they're at or near the same mountain east of the Jordan River. And Jeremiah had the authority, the family relationships, to actually spirit it away. And I have been criticized by some friends who read that, and they kind of shot me down. And I said, look, they said someone could easily see you sneaking that. I said, well, a lot of the people were really concerned about their own tails at that point because the Babylonians were coming, and they knew it. Jeremiah wasn't the only one that made it clear that the Babylonian army was on its way to Jerusalem. So people were running for cover. They were packing their things. They were sharpening their swords. They were wetting their pants. So I think it was pretty easy for him to perhaps package it and get the appropriate guys to help carry it and get it out of there. I think it's possible. And anyway, that's my story.
That's really fascinating. Can you hear me now, Daniel? Just checking if you can hear me. So, what I'm curious, you suggested that's also the same.
I think one of the keys.
Yeah, too bad we're having some delay issue here. So, if you can hear my question, I find it interesting that you suggest that Jesus' transfiguration happened there. I would put it at Mount Hermon, which Caesarea Philippi, of course, is at the base of that mountain. And so I think Mount Hermon is an excellent candidate. But I appreciate your perspective. And
right.
How do you think he could have gotten there in just 6 days' time? I mean, that's hoofing it pretty fast to get there for the transfiguration.
Well, one gospel says after 8 days. After 8 days, they climb the mountain. So it's after 8 days. So between 2 gospels say 6 days, about 6 days, and then one says after 8 days. So between 6 days and 8 days, there's a funny little number in there. It's called 7. So somewhere along the way, they took a chill and actually took a rest. Now, where did the Sabbath fall in this? I get it, undescribed march. Were they in Caesarea Philippi, or were they in the regions of Caesarea Philippi? It's about 100. If you do a push pin in Caesarea Philippi and a push pin on Mount Nebo, it's 111 miles. If you actually walk it, paying general common sense route along the river, it's more than 111 miles. It might be more like 120. So it's a considerable walk. I get it, but I don't think that they were in Caesarea Philippi. A lot of times when people go to Israel, they'll actually go right up to the waterfall. They'll go right up to the cliff where the temple of Pan and I guess Jupiter or the Caesar's temple that was there, and they'll say that Jesus was standing here and he said, "Who do you say that I am? Who do men say that I am?" I don't believe that Jesus had that conversation with his disciples at the foot of the cliff looking at these pagan temples that were up and functioning at the time. I think they were outside of town. So they're already a few miles south. It's not impossible. And I also bear that out in the text. There are people who do walk racing, who do many miles. Now, they don't do it 6 days in a row, I'll grant you that. But the disciples, Peter, James, and John, and Jesus, were not old. They were all under 30 or about 30 years old. John was likely a teenager. So to say that they had enough wherewithal and energy to make the trip, I think it's plausible. I also think that one of the contributing reasons as to why they were sleeping when Elijah and Moses appear with Jesus in the Transfiguration is because they were exhausted, tired from hiking, from walking. The Bible doesn't say that they walked. I understand that. But interestingly, 3 of the Gospels, John doesn't address it at all, but the 3 synoptics do go to the trouble of mentioning this window of time. And it is challenging, but it is enough time humanly, particularly when you take into account that one of the accounts was after 8 days, they climbed up a mountain, which doesn't mean that they reach the top after 8 days. It means they get to the base of whatever mountain they're going to climb. And then after that 8 days, they climb. So that gives you even more time to go from basically where Shittim is. You can see it in that graphic that's still on the screen if it's still there. The Shittim image, that's pretty level there. But to get from there up to Mount Nebo, another 3 miles. I mean, it's not that far away. So
interesting.
And my arguments about the 2 participants being who they were and where they were last seen in life is compelling.
Absolutely. I mean,
as far as the walk goes, it's certainly feasible. I mean, I'm not in the best shape, but even I can walk 3 hours a day for probably 12 hours. At 3 miles an hour and walk 12 hours, that's 36 miles. I mean, I'm not, and you got to figure back in that day, Yeshua and the disciples were probably in much better shape than your average American. They were used to walking places and living in the environment. So I as far as the walking distance, I don't think that is a death knell to it. Now, which I was interested. Are you claiming the mountain? Because you read from Maccabees where he went up the mountain. Are you claiming that the ark and where the ark may be hidden is the Mount Nebo versus the other mountain Moses went up, Mount Sinai? I mean, is it? Because Maccabees doesn't say which mountain is what I'm saying.
Are you asking me how high the mountain is?
No, it's hard to do this without being.
Because you're also.
I was just wondering if it could have been. Sorry. I was wondering if it could have been Mount Sinai where the ark is hidden, where the original 10 Commandments versus Mount Nebo. That was really because it doesn't say which mountain in Maccabees, which Moses.
Which Mount Sinai are you speaking of?
The one that Moses went up and received the 10 Commandments.
Speaking of, there's about 15 candidates.
The one that's charred on top.
Yes.
The one that looks like a ball of fire came
Moses
down
died
on
on
about
Mount Nebo.
3,500 years ago. That's what I'm saying. But he died on Mount Nebo. That's what I'm saying is this mountain he went up. Why would it be Mount Nebo? Is my question. Versus the mountain where he received the Ten Commandments. Could that? It just doesn't say in Maccabees. That's my only question. I just don't think. I think they could have made the walk though. So. But it's hard to have a give and take when he can only hear part of what we're saying. So it's not his fault.
Well, we're kind of stuck here with some of our technology. The communication is not the best, unfortunately. But Daniel, it's very fascinating what you've put together in the book, and clearly you've done a tremendous amount of research, and you know the lay of the land very well. And I really appreciate that. Where can people find your book? Where would they get this?
Do you see that image? If you could share that, or
Yes.
Yeah. So if they take their little smartphone and zap that, or if they type in the tiny URL just right there that's written, if you go to that tiny URL, it'll take you to. I mean, the only place to get the book and the map as a package is through Prophecy Watchers through their bookstore. The book itself is available directly from Amazon if you prefer to get it from Amazon. There is an advertisement in the book that I deliberately put in there that points people to me if they want to order a map directly from me. The map, I mean, it's just the reality of distribution. I mean, it doesn't have a barcode. I mean, it's just a nightmare to solve this. So I've got a pretty good inventory of the maps at my house, and I've already sent them to more than a dozen people. So if people want to contact me, there's instructions in the book once they get the book on how to reach me and how to request one from me. Or you can get one directly from Prophecy Watchers too. You can go to prophecywatchers.com, go to their bookstore, and look up Redemption Corridor. You'll see it, and you can order a map directly from them. I think it's like, I don't know, $5 plus shipping. And it's like, $7 or $8, and they'll send one to your house. That's the United States, of course. People who are international who may see this, they can reach out to me by going to that URL, and when they order the book, if they get a book from Amazon, let's say you're in Britain or you're in Australia and you order a book, my how to reach me is inside the book, and I'd be happy to work with you to get a map to you. But
awesome. Hey,
it's a labor of love, that's for sure.
We only have a few more minutes. Can you maybe tell us one more major discovery that you talk about in the book? That'd be really great. You can hear me.
Well, yeah. I really like the Jerusalem basin. This is where it all started for me, was in Jerusalem, and this is what I was really looking at. The rest of the things sort of developed over time. I think one of the things I really thought about was Genesis 15. So the Genesis 15 story is called the Covenant of the Pieces by Jews. It's the Abrahamic covenant where God got Abraham's attention. So this is before the Torah. This is before Moses. This is before all of this stuff. And he asks Moses to cut some animals. And so he cut them and put them opposite one another. Well, I believe that he literally split them at the spine and laid the pieces opposite one another, and that he laid them in an east to west orientation. And where the scriptures describe that a torch, let me see if I can find this. I've got it open right here. The Lord said to Abram, "Bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." He brought him all of these and divided them, the scriptures say, in the middle. Now, I don't know what the Hebrew is there. I have to defer to Douglas. In the middle, and laid each half opposite the other. Now, I've seen all kinds of Christian and Jewish illustrations of this, and it looks like a scattered, tousled butcher shop. It's a mess. I mean, this would be a mess anyway, but I'm saying there's an orderliness to it. Back to the text. He brought him all these and divided them in the middle and laid each half opposite the other, but he didn't divide the birds. The birds of prey came down on the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. When the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram. Now terror and great darkness fell on him. He, the Lord, said to Avram, know for sure that your offspring will live as foreigners in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them. They will afflict them 400 years. I will also judge that nation whom they will serve. Afterward, they will come out with great wealth, but you will go to your fathers in peace. You will be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, they will come here again, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet full. Okay, and here's the point. It came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace. Again, these are English words for Hebrew terms. There's a number of translations that describe these objects, but a smoking furnace and a flaming torch passed between the pieces. In that day, Yehovah made a covenant with Avram, saying, I have given this land to your offspring, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. He lists the tribes that they're going to be overcoming, all the way down to the Jebusites. That's Genesis 15, 1 through 21. So I hold that this event, and this is contrary to, there's more than one opinion actually within Judaism, but I hold that this event occurred at the threshing floor of the Salemites. This is before Arunah. This is before the Jebusite threshing floor, but the threshing floor was already there. The summit of this lower Mount Moriah was already there. And I believe it is there that Avram did this. And this is, besides the actual covenant that's occurring here, this is a foretelling, a sort of, if you will, a christening of this mountain for temple sacrifice. And this inventory that you see before you is generally the inventory, not every case, but this is the inventory of sacrifice that occurred on the temple. And so I think that the gap between the animals where there was blood, this is where the Lord passed a fiery furnace and a flaming torch in the presence of Ram. And this is where the temple is eventually built. This is where the altar of the temples of Solomon, of Ezra and Nehemiah, and of Herod were built on this location.
Hey Daniel,
So
can you kind of give us
of the animals?
Could you give us some I don't know, some justification for why you think this happened at Mount Moriah? I think it's an interesting theory. I'm just curious how you got there.
I didn't hear your question.
Why do you think the sacrifice in Genesis 15 took place at Mount Moriah? I don't know if you can hear me. Well, fascinating stuff. This has really been interesting. Thank you, Daniel. We really appreciate you coming on. I wish we could have had a little better communication.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, this has been good. Hopefully we can have a better connection next time. But thank you again for coming on. And I want to thank everybody for you've been sending in some questions. We've been checking those out to consider for future shows. So thank you so much. Again, thank you. And if people want to get Daniel's book, I would encourage you to do that. The Redemption Corridor, Understanding Sacred Topography in the Holy Land, the Pattern of Yehovah, and the Way of Messiah. So you can get that at Prophecy Watchers as well as from Daniel. So thank you again. And I want to say basically good night to everybody. God bless you. And, stay in the word because it's really